Hello everyone, welcome to Scalers YouTube channel. My name is Aditya. I'm currently working as a data architect at PepsiCo. In Module 4, we are going to talk about the difference between authorization and authentication. I'll also give you a walkthrough on Azure core components on Azure Data Factory.
Hi everyone, welcome to Module 4 of Data Engineering. Today we're going to give you a walkthrough of the different components of Azure Data Factory. We are going to open ADF Studio and then we'll walk through the different components on the UI. Then we'll talk about Azure Integration Runtime, what exactly is integration runtime and different types of integration runtimes. Then I'll delve into the basics of Blob versus ADLS Gen 1 versus ADLS Gen 2, how these things came into picture, right? And then we're going to talk about authentication. What are the different methods of authentication which we use in the real-time industry, and what is authorization, right? We're going to take all these examples and we'll then walk through different concepts. Let me open Azure Data Factory Studio. You can see I have opened this link portal.azure.com. You can directly click on this or you can go and click on home. So this is the page on which you will land. So portal.azure.com is maintained by Microsoft Cloud, right? So you can see different components over here. If you want to open storage account, you can click here. If you have Data Factory, basically, if you want to launch the Azure Data Factory Studio, just click on this. We have already created one Azure Data Factory Studio. I'm just going to click on Launch Studio. And this is the ADF Studio where we are going to create all our pipelines, orchestrate them, schedule them, and run them to copy and register data from different source to target. As you can see, ADF B4 Lab. So it's basically Azure Data Factory. We have given some kind of name, calling it as lab. I'm going to give you a walkthrough of different components which you see on the screen. This is the home button, which will be landing you on this page. Pencil icon is nothing but author button. If you click on that, you can see different ADF resources, basically factory resources. Here are different pipelines which you have. You can see all kinds of pipelines which we have created earlier. I can give you a random example of a pipeline, but yeah, let me first give you a walkthrough of different components. CDC is a newly developed concept. It stands for change data capture, basically to understand any changes within the source system. If you want to see those changes, we can track it by using Azure Data Factory. It's a new concept, but yeah, we can still do it. We already discussed about datasets. Datasets tells us about the structure of the data. If you're connecting it with any source system or any target system, you need to have different kinds of dataset based upon what type of source you're using or what type of target you're using, right? Data flows, again, data flows is something which you're going to discuss, but yeah, it's not majorly used in the industry. It is used to perform very simple to small transformations, something like a filter option or aggregate options, right? Small transformations can be performed by Azure Data Factory, but usually we don't do it because whenever we go for data flows, it's going to spin up my Spark cluster. And this, the cost which we are getting from Spark cluster on Azure Data Factory is comparatively high when compared to Azure Databricks. We can also connect our Azure Data Factory to Power Query, and that option is also here. If you see, this is a plus icon. If I click on that, I have different kinds of resources which I can use. I can create a pipeline, I can create a change data capture preview, I can create a data set, and I can create a data flow, right? I'm not going to create anything, I'm just trying to give you a walkthrough of different components we have. On my right side, you can see all the symbols. These are basically the updates. Azure, Microsoft usually keeps on updating the tool now and then whenever there is a patch or whenever there is an update. So you can go through updates, weekly, or you can just go through it whenever you find time. But yeah, these are the updates which you see, which is released by Microsoft. I can close it. You can see you can switch data factory. I have currently used one of the data factory, but yeah, you can switch it. Notification. You'll get notification when basically you're publishing your pipelines. For now, we don't have any notification because we are not publishing anything. Going back, these are the settings. Basically, if you want to perform some settings, you can convert your theme to default view or a dark view, depends upon you. Again, if you need some help, you have Azure Data Factory documentation, which you can go through it. If you're facing some error from Microsoft side, you can connect to the team from Microsoft and raise a concern. All those things are available. There is feedback also. Obviously, if you have any feedbacks or improvement, you can obviously give your feedback. Uh, Let me cancel this thing, right? So this exactly is author icon where you can deploy or develop your pipelines. Uh, Let me create a pipeline. We'll name it as pipeline underscore test. When I have named it, you can click on this icon, properties. So basically, my pipeline underscore test will be created. If you can see, this is my pipeline underscore test. Now I can pull in different kinds of activities. We have different kinds of activity. Copy data is one of the majorly used activity. It is used to copy data from source to sink. So I can select wide variety of sources, right? I can select a data source. It can be CSV. Let me select any data source in CSV format, right? This is a CSV file which I'm going to dump to a sink. I can select a sink dataset as delimited text file. Taking one CSV and I'm dumping the same file in CSV formats in other location, right? If I go to mapping, there's no mapping required. But yeah, source, if I click on open, the dataset is already configured to a particular link service, right? And if you can click on test connection, it's going to tell you if connection is possible. Let's see if it is working. It is testing for that particular connection. But yeah, you first need to create a link service, then you need to create a dataset for that particular link service. Give the path also. Basically, where are you trying to pick up your file from? So you have a path, source container, subfolder is list of files. Within that, there is an input file in txt format. Right? I'm going to close this. In the sink also, I have one dataset which is in delimited format, which is a CSV. I'm going to open it. Again, file path is basically source container, source, and .json file. We're going to, load it in the format of a JSON file. Let me do the test connection, and connection is successful. So basically, if I debug pipeline, debug is basically will tell you how my pipeline is working in the background. You can see copy activity is being performed. I click on refresh. It will take some seconds of time, but yeah, once the copy activity is completed, we can go and check if the file has been placed or not, right? So I can see source, open, source container, list of files is the folder. There is a source container file path. We have to see where this container is, and within the folder list of files, it will pick up this file, right? And it is going to dump in same source container, another folder is there, source, and in JSON format it is going to place. So let me go and see my pipeline. Just click somewhere. My copy data activity is running. Let me refresh it. It is still running. We'll wait for some time. So copy activity is the majorly or famous used activity in Azure Data Factory. We are going to see what all it has within it. We are going to still consider and build big pipelines, basically complex pipelines, which will help you to understand a lot of things in going forward. So let me go to home. I'll open one of the storage account, or let me go to home and see the container basically. Uh, Okay, I need to go to storage account first. Directly I cannot open this container. Go to storage account. Let me see if this is available. Go to containers. I think it is already moved. What? Let's see. Source container. We have picked up one file from. Let me go back. Source. Open dataset. We picked up a file from list of files folder. Right. Let me go back. So list of files folder. So this file, we picked up this file. Okay. Source container, go back, and we are dumping it. Let me close this. We are syncing it in folder called source, and the file is web.json. So folder called source, and the file is web.json. You see, today's date, 23rd of Jan 2024, I got the file. So the same file was already present. Since it is present already, it is creating another file name, json2.json. So, okay, we gave the name as json2 only, so it is creating a file called json2.json. It keeps on overriding the files, right? It will override the previous file, but yeah, you can see and track it based upon the date, right? So this way, my Azure Data Factory helps us to, ingest the data from different sources and helps us to sync it or put it or load it in different target systems. So I have shown you the author icon. Basically, it will help you to create multiple pipelines, complex pipelines. I'm going to give you much more examples in the future classes, but yeah, this is a basic pipeline which I wanted to tell you, right? So this is a monitor button. I can monitor all the pipelines over here. I did not put any triggers as of now, but I can see my last debugged pipeline. So the pipeline which I ran recently, you can see the job run ID of that particular pipeline, how much time it took to execute, what is the starting time and what is the ending time, and the pipeline name. If I click on the pipeline, you are able to see the same pipeline which I ran, right? So let me go back. So make sure you don't publish anything because I don't want to create or save the changes. I can click on refresh. So we talked about monitor. It is used to monitor the pipeline, monitor if the pipeline has passed or failed, also to check if my pipeline is still running, or to check if there is some dependency of some other job on this pipeline, or to check if the pipeline is running at the scheduled interval of time, right? If a pipeline you're debugging it, basically you're just running it in normal mode by clicking on debug, so it will be shown over here. But if you have already scheduled a pipeline, it will run on a particular time interval, right? On a triggered, basically scheduled interval. So there you can go and click on triggered, and you can see all the pipelines which you have triggered automatically. So this is the monitor tab. Now you can see this briefcase icon. If you click on that, you will have different types of things over here. Let me give you a walkthrough of different things, what we usually view or what we usually use, right? Link services. Link services is basically a kind of connection which is used to connect to different source system, target system, or different any kind of connections, right? It is used to connect my pipeline with some kind of connections basically. So there are around 99 plus connectors. It can be CSV connector. I mean, link service again depends upon different kind of sources. So if I click on use link service, you can see the different wide variety of link services Azure Data Factory has. So I think as of now, there are around 99 plus link services. You can use, I mean, there are like 99 plus connectors in link services. You can use any of them for Amazon S3. It depends, like depending upon what type of source you're trying to connect to or what type of object you're trying to connect to, there is different kinds of link service. So try to select any of it. Let's say I select Amazon S3, click on continue. So you can see the name is Amazon S3. Automatically, by default, the integration runtime which is chosen is auto resolved integration runtime. You can change it to SHIR or some other type of integration runtime. It's up to you, right? And then each kind of source will have different type of connectivity. So for Amazon S3 bucket, it's a kind of storage layer. It is asking for the URL of Amazon S3 bucket or where exactly you're going to store your data. And to authenticate the connection with this S3 bucket, you have access key, right? So this is one of the things. If I want to directly connect to Excel, if I write Excel over here, Azure file database. So in Azure, you can click on Azure file storage, click on continue, right? So basically it is asking for the storage account name where your file is placed, right? And the file share. If I select any storage account name, for example, so there is no file share. File share is basically if you have any method to share this file. So as of now, we don't have anything, but yeah, let me go back and change to Azure Blob Storage, click connect and see what it's trying to give. Okay, so here I'm trying to connect a pipeline to a source, which is nothing but a blob. So there are different types of authentication types. I'll discuss them right now in some time. But yeah, authentication type is one of the way to check if the user is authenticated or if the user is genuine or if the user is valid or within working within the company premise. So it can be a user or device or any system. So authenticating whether the person is working within the current company or not. So there are different ways of authenticating a particular user or device or a system. We are going to talk about it. And these different subscriptions, you can go for a free trial for 1 month by using a credit card. But yeah, if you want to, if you have expired your free trial, you can go for pay as you go. I'll go back and show you like there are a lot of characters which you can choose, and depending upon that, you can schedule or you can activate your link service. So for now, I'm just going to cancel it. I have already created few link services, and you can see the related number of times it has been used. 13 is basically the number of pipelines this is calling this particular link service. So 13 is basically number of pipelines which is calling this link service. Its target copy is being called by 21 kind of pipelines, right? We have integration runtime, right? Integration runtime is basically a compute for our pipeline. It is basically, I would say, a fuel to run all our pipelines. It will give the compute to the resources, right? Microsoft Purview, it is something new. It is basically connecting Microsoft Purview to Azure Data Factory, and it will help you to check your data across different environments. So it's something new. Again, there's a lot of research or POC being done. Git configuration. This is to configure Git CI/CD mechanism to your Azure Data Factory, because whatever we release, whatever pipelines we develop, to go through or should go through a particular CI/CD process. So we develop the pipeline, then we move. We develop the pipeline in a feature branch, then we publish it to a master branch. From master it goes to QA, from QA to prod. So it flows in that way, right? So that is enabled in a Git configuration. We have ARM template. Anything which we create, anything which we publish is stored in an ARM template, and that is basically used whenever we deploy our code from lower to high environment, right? Triggers, a very important concept. So basically, whenever you want to schedule your pipeline, then you enable a trigger on it. You create a trigger and you tell the pipeline, okay, this is the time when your pipeline is supposed to run. There are different types of triggers. Again, schedule trigger, tumbling window trigger. We are going to discuss that, but yeah, as of now, just remember triggers are basically used to schedule your pipeline. We have some global parameters. So many times, whenever we are creating a pipeline, you need not hard code the values within the pipeline. You can call it out over here within global parameter, and there you can pass it as a parameter. You can pass those parameters. The parameters that will come here and read the value from global parameters, right? Data flow libraries, we are not going to use much of data flow, so it's okay. These are the different things which we have in this manage component or manage icon which you see over here. It's like a briefcase icon. Learning center is something which will give you different videos, tutorials, or quick overview for the tool. Now let us go back to home. Let us click on author. We have seen this copy data activity. I have orchestrated a file to copy it from source to target. We have seen that file. So I'm just going to refresh it. I don't want to save my changes. If I want to save it, you can click on publish all. Validate all is basically to validate all the resources if everything is fit and fine, right? You can click refresh also. You can also track this pipeline on ID. You can either go and monitor from here, or you can just click these three dots. I'll show you again. These dots you can click, and you can click monitor from here as well. You can see debug. It won't show under trigger, but it will show under debug, right? So I don't want to save this pipeline. I can just refresh it. Let me do it. Refresh, refresh, right? So my pipeline, whatever I have created, it did not save back in the Azure Data Factory. So whatever save changes we will be doing, it will be on our local repository or my feature branch. I have to publish my pipeline once it is completely created to a master branch, dev master branch. Master branch is somewhere where all the developers will be working together. And once all the developers who are working in that master branch complete the sprint, the pipelines, whatever is completed as per the business requirement, they are going to move to low to high environment. So from dev, it is going to move to QA. So release team, basically there are different release teams who are working within the company. They will download the ARM template and they will publish it from dev to QA, right? So it goes to different cab approvals process. It goes to CI/CD mechanism process, which I think most of the companies follow. This is the major thing which I wanted to cover. So you can try your hands on over here. You can also search the different data factory components from here as well, right? I have shown you different things. So storage account, we have already seen storage account is basically, it can be type of different kinds of storage account. It can be blob or ADLS Gen 1, Gen 2. We have already created one storage account. I'll just click on that. Go to data lake storage, ADLS container, and this is the file which we have here. So I'll explain now in brief. Let's go to the next point. I think it's a good time to talk about first about we'll come to integration runtime in a later stage. Let's first talk about ADLS Gen 1, ADLS Gen 2, and blob. So let me write here. So first let's talk about blob. BLOB. What does blob stands for? Blob means binary large objects. So when Microsoft was developing Azure Cloud, the main intention of having cloud is to store different types of file. It can be audio file, text file, semi-structured, unstructured, or structured files. It can be any kind of file. So to store files which are not in semi-structured or in unstructured format, binary large objects as a storage layer came into picture, right? So advantage of having these features as storage is basically they are highly scalable. So advantage will be like they are highly scalable. I mean, they can be scaled up, and cost of storing data is very less. So that's one of the advantages of using blob. So first, Azure came up with the concept of blob, but the problem with blob is there is no hierarchical namespace. Basically, if I open drive, let's say I have opened C drive, right? Within that I have programs folder. Within that I have some other folder, let's say games. Then within that I have some other folder like 2024 games, right? So I have different folders which is present in hierarchy. So this type of feature is not available in blob. But there is a concept called virtual container, virtual folder. This came, I think, 2.5 years back. Virtual folder is blob helps us now to come up with this kind of hierarchy, provided my ultimate folder or my last folder has a file. So 2024 should have some file. Let's say road rash game, road rash dot, let's say CSV. There's one file which has cheat code. Okay. So this file should be present in 2024. If this file is deleted, then there won't be any folder structure being maintained. Blobs directly can save the files within one blob or within one binary large object. But if you want to have a hierarchical namespace or this kind of structure, you need to have one file. So this kind of folders, what we're trying to prepare is called as virtual folder. As soon as I remove this file, my entire structure or this folder won't be remaining. All the folders will be deleted, right? This is called as binary large object. Now, what is the difference? So Azure then came up with the concept, okay, every time I have to create a folder and then place a file, let me have something called as ADLS. It stands for Azure Data Lake Storage. Azure Data Lake Storage. So data lake is a place where you can store any kind of data which can be structured, semi-structured, unstructured. I have already discussed. The advantage of using a data lake when compared to data warehouses, you can store any kind of data, you know, and the storing is very easy. You need not try to prepare the schema, so it's basically schema on read. Schema is prepared when you're reading the data. It's not schema on write, right? And the other thing is Azure Data Lake Storage is very cost effective. The cost for storing your data is very minimal. So that's where Azure Data Lake Storage is used. And last benefit which is missing out in Blob is hierarchical name space is enabled. The major problem what we had with Blob is basically hierarchical namespace was not enabled, which was solved when we are using ADLS. So basically we can maintain some folder structure. Let's say Aditya is a folder. Within Aditya there is a Bengaluru folder. Within Bengaluru I have some folder like college. Within college I have folder certificates. And within certificates I have different certificates like 10th, 12th. So even if I delete these files, my 10, 12 certificates, my folders will not be eradicated or it will not be dissolved. I will still have these folder structures which are being maintained. So this is called as Azure Data Lake Storage. So there is again a difference between, so ADLS again are of two types, Gen 1 and Gen 2. Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 1, Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. Currently we are using Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. Now, a very good interview question is basically they will ask you the difference between Gen 1 and Gen 2. What I have discussed right now, this thing is Gen 1. Okay. And Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 is nothing but Gen 1 plus blob. So basically, Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 is built on top of Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 1, right? And it also has features of blob. So I can store my files in hierarchical format. If I don't want to use ADLS features, I can still have blob features where once the file is deleted, all this folder structure will be deleted. But since it has Gen 1 features also, I can store all the kinds of files which I'm storing in blob. But yeah, the structures will be still maintained even if the files are deleted, right? That is the difference between ADLS Gen 2. So that is the difference between blob versus Gen 1 versus Gen 2. So Gen 2 is nothing but features on built on top of Gen 1. Gen 2 is nothing but Gen 1 plus blob. Gen 1 is Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 1. It basically has hierarchical namespace. Basically, when you delete a file within the last folder, then the folder structure remains still consistent. Blob is something different. Hierarchical namespace is not enabled. It is used to store binary large objects like music file, JSON file, XML file, or any audio visual files. Basically, it can store any kind of file. But yeah, if you want to enable hierarchical namespace, you have to, make it as a virtual folder. Let's talk about Azure Data Integration Runtime. I think now it is the right time to dwell into that. But before that, I want to show you my home. So if I click on storage account, let me go back to home. If I click on storage account, these are the different storage account, and you can see version 2, which is ADLS Gen 2 or version 2. All these were enabled pay as you go, nothing is free. I can open, let's say, this storage account, and you can see it is having a data lake storage ADLS. If I click on that, there is a container. So basically, a storage account is built on top of ADLS Gen 2. Within the storage account, you have container. I can see here there is a source container, and within that, since it is a Gen 2, these are the folders which are being maintained. Even if I delete one file, delete, yes, deleting the blobs, refresh, no blobs found, go back, refresh. You see, the folder is still there even if I have deleted the file. It says no blobs found because it is Gen 2. It is blob plus ADLS Gen 1. Even though I have deleted a file, my structure remains same. The folder is not being deleted, right? So that's what I wanted to show you. Now let's talk about integration runtime. So if you remember, we've talked about what is integration runtime in the previous module. Just understand like Azure integration runtime is nothing but a fuel to power your pipelines. So it provides all the resources to your pipeline. It can be compute resource, memory, storage. So basically, if I open let me open a task manager. If you open the task manager, you can see how much of resources or storage you are using, how much RAM it is being provided, how much memory is given to each application, all the things you can see, right? Similarly, Azure Integration Runtime will talk about what type of compute resources or what type of resources Azure is providing to your pipeline. So if I go to the official definition, let me show you the official definition. I have PPT over here. If you see the official definition, integration runtime in Azure Data Factory is a compute infrastructure that provides data integration capability across different network environment. So it basically provides all the resources whichever is required by a pipeline. It can be compute, it can be memory, it can be storage, all the things. We have different types of integration runtime. So if in interview, if you're not able to remember the definition, just understand like it is a fuel to power your pipelines. The fuel can be a kind of a resource, resources as in the storage or memory or compute, right? There are three types of integration runtimes. I will call it as IR. First one, auto resolved integration runtime. Second one, we have SHIR, self hosted integration runtime, right? And the third one is SSIS, integration runtime. This is mostly used for SSIS jobs, ETL jobs, or packages, right? What is auto-resolved integration runtime? Azure understands like whenever a pipeline is created, by default, it is going to give or it is going to assign integration runtime as auto-resolved integration runtime. But what is the reason behind it? So auto-resolved integration runtime is basically used when both your source and target is sitting on Azure cloud, right? When I'm talking about both the resources, basically both the source and target system are present in Azure cloud in a public domain, in a public environment, right? So whenever you want to connect a pipeline, which is connecting a source and target, which is present on Azure cloud, so by default, Azure is going to tell, hey, you don't need some other kind of infrastructure or some other kind of mechanism to give you resources for infrastructure or for compute. So I'm going to give you auto resolve integration runtime because it is already familiar with Azure cloud. Use this as is. This is basically auto resolve integration runtime. It is mainly used when both my source and target is an Azure component or it is sitting on Azure cloud. Then someone will ask me what is self-hosted integration runtime. This is a feature or another kind of integration runtime when either my source or target is sitting on-premise or basically in a private network. It is not part of cloud. For example, if I want to connect to Oracle server, let's say it is not sitting on cloud, I need to fetch a file or I need to fetch data from Oracle server and I want to dump it to Azure Data Lake storage. So here my source is on-premise, basically it is sitting on a private network and my target is on cloud. So if someone will say, why can't I use auto resolve? Because my source is not on cloud, right? I cannot use auto resolve integration runtime. I have to use an integration runtime which can be used for both the types of systems. One is source and target. So that's why I go for SHIR because it is used to connect source and target if they are not, if both of them are not sitting on Azure cloud, right? Here one is sitting in private network, which is a kind of on-premise environment. We have already discussed about cloud versus on-premise. On-premise is like you're owning your own house. You have to do your own patch updates, all the house cleaning activities by yourself. So the responsibility will be high, flexibility will be less, right? We have already discussed this thing. So this is called as SHIR. Now, if someone asks me, what is SSIS, integration runtime? When do we use it exactly? So SSIS stands for SQL Server Integration System, right? And usually SSIS also is part of Microsoft. Whenever our ETL jobs are running on SSIS, we have a different kind of SSIS integration runtime for those kind of jobs. Since the pipelines are built on SSIS suite or SSIS packages, Azure has developed its own integration runtime, which they are calling it as SSIS integration runtime. So by default, if your ETL jobs are prepared on SSIS SQL Server integration system, go ahead and use SSIS integration runtime. The main agenda of integration runtime is to provide compute resources to your pipeline. So if both source and target is on cloud, auto resolve will be selected. If either one of them is not on cloud or on a private network, use SHIR. If everything is on SSIS ETL jobs, then use SSIS IR, right? I also now want to show, so we have covered integration runtime. I have shown you link service, data sets, activities. Activities is something like a copy activity which I have shown. Pipelines I have already shown. Data flows we'll see in the later stages. I want to explain you this diagram. This is a very important diagram which I think many of the people uh, wanted to know, but yeah, they are not much aware if they are working in the companies. But yeah, I want to give you a high overview of what this diagram means. So within Azure, you will see different services, right? Different kinds of systems or components which you can use. They are called as resources. So you have a database, you have compute, you have server, you have different kinds of things. All these resources comes under resource group. So whenever a new person joins a company, he will be added to a resource group. If he is added to a resource group, he can use all these applications, right? Which are nothing but resources. So different resource group. So resource group is again governed by the project team. You will fall under which resource group. So sometimes all the resource groups of the company or some resource groups of the company fall under one bucket which is called a subscription. And two or more subscriptions they fall under management group. So it is like management group are a group of people which will manage the different subscription. Per each subscription they're going to pay, right? Because obviously when you're using something under Azure, you'll take a kind of subscription. It says like, okay, I'll have so many resource groups, and within these many resource groups, these many resources will be there, and I'll be using it, right? So management group is a leadership team, let's say. Subscription is the kind of subscription they want to use. Within the subscription, we have resource groups, and within resource group, we have different kind of resources, right? So this is what I wanted to show you, and now I can directly jump to integration runtimes, which I have already told you. Auto resolve integration runtime. So you can see the definition. It is automatic integration runtime created and managed by Azure, which I have already explained. Like it's a default integration runtime when data sources and destinations are hosted in public networks such as Azure. Basically, when both my source and target system are sitting on Azure environment, Azure cloud. ADF by default selects the auto resolve integration runtime automatically when creating a pipeline if the data source and destination are compatible with it. We have already discussed. Then auto-resolve integration runtime is compatible with various data sources and data processing activities, such as in ADF you have seen like Azure Blob, ADLS, Azure SQL Database, and SD Insight. I have already discussed all the points, right? What is SHIR? It stands for Self-Hosted Integration Runtime. It basically means you can run copy activities between a cloud data store and a data stored in a private network. Private network is nothing but on-premise, which we have already discussed. Then it uses the infrastructure and hardware managed by you. Since it is on-premise, it's like a own house, right? You have to do all the things by yourself. You take care of installation, maintenance, patching, and scaling, but you also pay the time you're going to use the Azure Data Factory. That also I have discussed. So SHIR works like a gateway. You install integration runtime on a machine inside the private network, and then it can communicate with the ADF. That I have already spoken while explaining. What about SSIS? Azure SSIS integration runtimes are VMs running SSIS engine, and ADF uses SSIS integration runtime for executing SSIS packages. We have already discussed most of the things. I think it's repetitive in the slides, right? I have covered the walking through of different components on Azure Data Factory. We've covered different integration runtimes also just now, and I have discussed about difference between Gen 1, Gen 2, and ADLS, and difference between all these things versus blob. Before I move to authentication and authorization, I wanted to cover one more topic, which is I've already discussed about data lake. I also want to talk about data lake house. So how data lake and data lake house came into picture? We've already discussed Azure Data Lake Storage just some minutes back, right? ADLS, German, Gen2, Blob. So we know like right now what is data lake. Data lake is used to store different formats of file, different structures of file. Okay, it is highly scalable. It can store the data even if the folders are not virtual, right? But one problem with data lake is when different people are using data lake. Let's say around 100 people in a company, if they are using the same data lake, everyone is dumping their data. After a certain time, let's say after certain years, there's a huge amount of data, and then you won't be able to locate where exactly the required data is sitting. For example, I have, let's say, two department within engineering, right? Let's say one department is working on Salesforce, some other department is working on ERP, and they are using the same data lake where they are storing their files or data. Let's say after some time, after 5 years of time, they have stored so much immense amount of data, and to give you a rough estimate, you can store around 5 TB of data in a storage account. 5 TB of data is huge. So after some time, after 5 years, these two projects within engineering, right? One who is working on Salesforce, other one who is working on ERP, they won't be able to locate their own data. Why? Because they have been continuously storing data in irregular fashion, and now they don't know where they can fetch their data from. So this kind of concept is called as a data swamp. When you're keeping on dumping data without understanding how you can fetch it, that becomes data swamp. So there are high chances your data lake can become a data swamp when it is used by different people over long period of time. Then how do you solve this problem? So to solve this concept, there was a paper or there was a POC done to come up with the concept of data lake house. So data lake house is nothing but a data lake plus a data warehouse. So if you see data lake, there's no house they are taking from warehouse, right? So it becomes data lake plus house, data lake house. So what additional features does this data lake house has? So if you know or understand, my data lake, you're just storing your data. There's not much security involved. There's no privacy or governance which a person has. There are no good amount of access controls also if you're storing your data on a data lake. All these problems were solved when a person moves from data lake to data lake house. So what are the features of data lake house? Number one, you are able to figure out where your data is sitting. This concept is called as catalog, Unity catalog. So it will tell, it's a kind of a dictionary. Basically, it will tell you in which page I have to go to fetch that information. Basically, it will tell which corner I have to go and fetch the data from. Right? There are something called as indexes, which will help me to guide to that particular page or a location where I can find my data. Right? Now coming to security and privacy, data lakehouse is much better, much robust when compared to data lake because there are a lot of third-party firewalls or security enablement on data lakehouse. And coming to data lake, there is another feature which is missing, which is called as ACID compliance. ACID properties are not enabled on data lake. Time travel is also not enabled in data lake. You cannot log your files using a data lake. So all these features are enabled in a data lake house. You can log your files, you can do time travel through different times of data, similar to what you have done in the data warehouse. So basically, data lake house has features of data lake, which is nothing but storing huge amount of data. It can be scalable, storing at a lower cost. Plus, it has features of data warehouse, basically asset compliance, then time travel, logging files. So all these things are concept of data warehouse. So that features also is enabled in data lakehouse. Also, you're able to figure out where your data is being stored. So that is one more advantage of using a data lakehouse. That's the major difference I wanted to tell you because we'll be also telling people to go through this definition before they sit for the interviews because many a times people get confused with these terminologies, right? So let us talk about authentication and authorization. Before I'll start authentication, I'll make you understand the definition of it. Authentication, authorization. Authorization is giving authority to someone, giving someone some kind of authority is called as authorization. Basically, giving some kind of accesses or power to do something is called as authorization. There are different types of authorization. You can give authorization by giving them accesses. So there is a read access, there is write access, there is contributor access, which is nothing but read and write and perform some execution, and there is execute access, basically perform action. So there are different types of authorization. Whenever a new person joins the company, he or she raises access, and the company will authorize the user and give them some kind of responsibility that he or she can either view the data or open the data or perform some kind of writes on top of the data or just execute the pipeline. This is called as authorization. Authentication is verifying or verification. Verifying if the person or user or system or device is part of our organization. So authentication will help us to enable data security, and it will help us to enable or check the connectivity when someone is trying to access the data. So whenever an external person joins the company or whenever a new person joins the company, we need to authenticate whether this person is actually from our company or not. So there are different ways of authenticating a person or a device or a system who is new to the company. For example, you create a Gmail account, you create a MMT account, Make My Trip account. You can access MMT by using your Gmail. When you click on Gmail, since you're already logged in, it doesn't ask for your email ID and password because you're already part of Gmail. So basically, what user ID and password you are using for Gmail, the same user ID and password is a kind of authentication for MMT, Make My Trip, to allow you to use that portal. Authentication will help a person use or get authority for something. It can be to get access as a read, write, or execute, or do some kind of activity. There are different authentication types, but I think we have covered a lot of things. Let us cover different authentication types in the next class, which is module 5. But before that, I want to take you on Azure Data Factory page again, and I want to show you one more thing. I want to show you the authentication. We go to home. You can see security and network. So here there are different kinds of security network or authentication. Manage ACL is basically access policy. If I click on that, basically how someone can access this storage account. I'm trying to see there's no access policy here. Access keys. Majorly, access keys are nothing but user ID password to connect to a particular storage account. These keeps changing every 6 months of time. So usually we recommend people to not use access keys. But yeah, depends again from company to company, the kind of process they use. Identity access control. So basically, you can control the access to a storage account. This is the storage account, right? Within storage account, we have a container, right? So you can control access of this container by using IAM, Identity Access Control Management. So you can see view my access, what kind of roles you are assigned to, right? You are an admin role. You have basically you can do all the activities which an admin can do, right? Check access, check what all accesses you have. So So you're part of a user group, right? I'll be going to talk about these different things, but yeah, for now, you see all the different kinds of roles a person can have: owner, contributor, reader, writer. So there are different kinds of roles. Again, depends upon the company. These tasks usually are handled by admin team. Our part is as a data engineer is just to raise access request whenever required, right? Data protection. Wanted to cover this topic also. Whenever I delete a file from Blob, so Blob internally, Microsoft Blobs can store or recover the data back to 7 days. If any file which you have deleted and it crosses more than 7 days, even if you raise an internal request to Microsoft, they won't be able to recover it. So it is a kind of a recovery mechanism. Let's say by mistake, if a new team member joins in the company and if he or she deletes a file which is not supposed to be deleted, so you have this soft delete option which you can still recover, right? So blobs, you can recover the files for 7 days. You can increase it, I think, up to 30 days. I'm not sure, but yeah, it is something which admin take care. So containers also, if someone deletes a container, right? We have one notebook. I think it is called as vacuuming notebook. It completely deletes a container. So if you by mistake have deleted a container, you can still recover it, I think, back to 7 days. So in the next module, we are going to talk about a different authentication type, and then we are going to talk what is the advantage of each of it. We have spoken about Gen 1, Gen 2, authentication and authorization. As I said, authentication is verification. Authentication is the process of verifying the identity of user, system, or device. It confirms that the claimed identity is valid, basically tells us whether the person is really working within the company, and authenticates, basically grants them access, authenticates the user to a system or resource. In simple words, authentication answers the question, who are you? Are you really working for the company or not? Right? Because every access is paid. Company also don't want to waste their money. Since it is a paid access, company wants to give it only the people who are actually working on it. Authorization is the process of granting access or denying access. When you join a company, you raise access to authorize to do something, right? You're asking some kind of access request, asking like, if you give me this access, I am authorized to perform this task. So this is called as authorization. It defines what actions a user or system can perform once their identity is verified. So to authorize someone, first they are authenticated. If yes, they are able to authenticate, then they get authorized power. We are going to discuss authentication types in the next class because it's something which will take time. But yeah,
I hope everything is clear. If you have enjoyed watching this video, please do like and subscribe to Scalar's YouTube channel. If you want to watch similar content in future, do not forget to subscribe to Scalar YouTube channel. Thank you for watching this video. We'll see you again.